The market economy. The role of consumers. 1. Consumers buy goods according to their individual needs. Businesses observe the purchases of consumers and develop goods and services to meet this demand. Number 2. Through market research, consumers inform businesses of their habits, trends, and preferences so as to satisfy their needs and wants. And number 3, consumers pay for the products they demand so that businesses can make a profit. This allows the firm to create wealth, jobs, and economic growth. Now let's have a look at the characteristics of economic goods. Economic goods are goods and services for which people are prepared to pay a price. For a good to be an economic good, it must have the following 3 characteristics. 1. The good must be scarce. The supply of the good must be scarce in relation to the demand for it. In other words, it must command a price. 2. The good must provide utility. Utility is the economics term for satisfaction. It must give a benefit or a feeling of satisfaction. And 3. Transferable. Ownership must be capable of being transferred from one person to another. Now, goods that are not economic goods, beauty, for example, not transferable. Fresh air, there's no price for it. Now we're going to look at the economic assumptions about human behavior. So let's have a look. There are 4. The consumer has limited income. The consumer's income is not large enough to satisfy all his needs and wants. Therefore, the consumer must choose between those goods he wishes to buy. Number 2, the consumer seeks to get maximum satisfaction or maximum utility from the income. Consumers will spend their limited income in such a way that they will achieve the best value for money. In other words, they obey the equimarginal principle of consumer behaviour. And we'll come to that at some stage. The consumer acts rationally. The consumers act in a manner consistent with his or her preferences. Right? For example, if a person sees an identical good priced differently in 2 adjoining shops, they will buy it at the lower price. And number 4, the consumer is subject to the law of diminishing marginal utility. As consumers consume additional units of a good, their marginal utility or extra satisfaction for this good will eventually decline. Now we move on to assumptions underlying the law of diminishing marginal utility. Now this tends to come up a bit. 1, it applies only after a certain point called the origin. The origin is the minimum quantity of the good which can be used effectively. And until this stage has been reached, the marginal utility or extra satisfaction may not diminish. Time has not elapsed for circumstances to change. If a consumer eats a product on a Monday, one on a Wednesday and one on a Saturday, his extra satisfaction may not diminish. But if the consumer eats the product one after the other, then diminishing marginal utility will set in. Number 3, income does not change. If income changes, marginal utility may not change as consumption increases. And lastly, does not apply to addictive goods. The consumer's marginal utility will not decline because each extra unit consumed brings additional marginal utility. For example, alcohol and cigarettes. Medicines. For example, the second dose may be just as important as the first. And finally, in this chapter, we're going to look at consumer equilibrium. This is the law of equimarginal returns. Now, the consumer is in equilibrium when he obtains maximum satisfaction, i.e., the law of equimarginal returns apply. This occurs when the ratio of marginal utility to price is the same for all the different goods he consumes. For example, the marginal utility of good A over the price of good A is equal to the marginal utility of good B over the price of good B.